Today I'm going to be doing a book review by one of my favorite authors, Steven Covey, and this is a really good book from the 90s that I had not read until recently. It's called First Things First. Now, I will tell you that this is not your normal, do more in less time and be more efficient type of time management book. And that's why I think I love Covey so much, and I really have appreciated his books. Like if you haven't read, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I've done a book review on The Speed of Trust. That's one of my other favorite books from him. He just has such a unique perspective on leadership and time management. And that's what I love about this book. So a couple things that you have to know right off the bat. Covey's going to talk about the clock versus the compass. So a lot of professionals are working based off of their clock, right? They're looking at their clock, they've got things to do, they've got appointments, they've got checklists that they want to do, they want to pack as much in as little time as possible, right? Covey says that's where we go wrong a lot of times, and that we should be making decisions based off of our compass. And our compass is our true north. Our compass is where we say, what do I really want to get done, right? So instead of making decisions off of urgency, which is the clock, we start to shift our perspective and we make decisions based off of importance, our true north. What do I really want to accomplish? And he does a great job by breaking up time into 4 quadrants. And it truly comes off of a grid of importance and urgency, right? So urgency across the top and importance over here, and we say, okay, is this urgent and important, right? So the 4 quadrants are, quadrant 1 is it's urgent and it's important. Quadrant 2 would be it's important but it's not urgent. Quadrant 3 is urgent but not important, and quadrant 4 is not urgent, not important. A lot of people find themselves in quadrant 4, and quadrant 4 is the time suck. It's the distractions. It's the just mindlessly numbing tasks that you just kind of want to do when you get overwhelmed and you want to check out. So they spend a lot of time in quadrant 4. You shouldn't spend any time in quadrant 4 because it's just a time suck. After that, we see a lot of times in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, right? So quadrant 1 is urgent and important. So we're talking, that appointment that you got to get to, a client deadline, a contract deadline, those things they're urgent and they're important. Now, quadrant 3, a lot of times, I think like email is something that can be urgent but not important, right? So we got to respond to our emails, but most of the time, guys, when emails come in, it's someone else's to-do list. I think that you should actually schedule and time block time for email because quadrant 3 is not going to get you where you want to go. Covey says we need to spend the most amount of time in quadrant 2, which is the important but not urgent. So he gives an example of what would happen to your business if you put together a process, right? Well, we all want to put together a process, and we know if we have a process, it's going to be, make our life easier. He says, well, what happens is it's super important, but it's not urgent. So it gets set to the side. And then here's where I just love his perspective. He says, what about your dinner with family? What quadrant is that in? Right? He says, most likely it falls into important, but not urgent. So now all of a sudden you're faced with, I've got to go meet this client, or I've got to go to dinner with my family or my child's, ball game or something like that. He says, oftentimes when we only work out of urgency and don't pay attention to what's important, we damage relationships and we damage ourself and the belief in ourself that we do what we say we're going to do. He also talks about in this book, and I'm sure that you've seen the analogy of the professor that's standing in front of the class, and he's got these big boulders, and he's got these medium-sized pebbles, and he's got sand, and he's got water, and then he's got a jar, and he says, okay, we're going to fit all of this in here. And the class starts to talk, well, okay, put the sand in first, and then this and that, and they go through all these different scenarios. But there's only one way to fit all of that into the jar of time, and that is by starting with the rocks. The rocks are the most important things that you need to get done. The problem is they don't always happen to be the most urgent. So if you are putting in, let's say, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, and quadrant 1 stuff in before you're doing quadrant 2, you're going to run out of time, right? And so you really have to make sure that you're focusing on moving the rocks first. Essentially, he's going to talk a lot about in this book how to make decisions on how to spend your time. And he's got one question that I really, really love, and it's going to help you make decisions on how to spend your time. He says, think deeply, think of one activity that if you did it superbly well and consistent, would have a significant positive result in your life or in your business. What would that activity be? And are you doing it, right? That's basically how you do it. Then he says, why don't you envision your 80th birthday, right? If you have a tough decision to make, picture yourself at your 80th birthday. Who's there? What kind of relationships do you have? Are you happy with the decisions that you made? That will be the easiest way for you to make a decision on how to spend your time. So I love this book. I want to have one last thought as we wrap it up. He talks about self-discipline and making decisions. He says, start keeping promises to yourself. I've talked a lot about this before. I have another show that I did on a podcast from Ed Milet about the power promise. This is similar to the power promise. Covey says, start keeping promises with yourself. Make and keep small commitments with yourself. He says, do it until your sense of honor outweighs your mood. And that is profound, guys. How many times have you not done something because you didn't feel like doing it, right? The alarm went off at 5 a.m. and I said, oh, I just don't want to work out, right? My mood said I didn't want to work out. He says, make and keep small commitments with yourself until your sense of honor outweighs your mood, right? Do the things that matter. Understand your true north of where you want to go and your outcome of your goals, and you will make decisions to help you get there. So I absolutely recommend First Things First. If you have any more questions about time management, drop me a link. I always love to talk about it.